was. It's cool. Now we have 2 recordings.
Oh.
I think what happened is I sent you to, I had to change Slack channels and I didn't tell you. I will go do that. Okay, so does that help you out, man?
Yeah.
Sweet. So do that tutorial, like figure out what Webpack does on its own outside of being a web server. You can use Webpack with static web servers, not dynamic web servers like Express, and then you can bring dynamic web serving into your complexity after the fact, right? You've done a bunch of Express, do some Webpack on its own using a static server, and then you can bring those 2 technologies together.
What's an example? Say static server.
A static server, so I like to use npm install globally HTTP server is a node package, HTTP-server. And all it does is it serves static files in a directory. So if I just make a static, I think I just did this earlier, no. Static site. It doesn't matter what you call this directory. I'm just calling it static site. So here's an empty directory. I'm going to make an index.html file. And in this file, I'll put some HTML, and I'll just say, hello from my static site. Okay? So static sites are the way the web used to work. Dynamic routing and receiving a request in a programming language and running some code and responding, that's a dynamic way to respond to a web request. That's newer web technologies. Web servers used to just serve static files. And so a static file is just like any other file. So we've got index.html here. So I'm going to run this application called static server, and I'm going to put a dot here. And it just starts up a web server and serves whatever's in that directory, right? I also am in the habit of doing -c-1, which is actually caching of the duration -1, which means no caching. That's just how this thing works. I did --help. It told me how to turn off caching because web servers generally have web caching built in. And so when we're developing, so if, for example, if I do static server here and I reload this page and then I go into here and I change what this thing says. Oh, it does. Okay. There is some element of caching I've run into here, but let's ignore that for now. So I've just got a single HTML file in this directory, and I run a static server, and now since I'm at / that gets routed to index.html. I can also go to index.html here, right? And now I can start doing whatever I want. I can put an about.html in here, and then if I go make an about page, and then I put a link to the home page. Right, so now on my index page, I have, oh, I put this on the about page. If I put these 2 links here on the index page, did it crash? Oh no, I turned it off, sorry. Okay, so hello from space, and if I click about, now that takes me to the about page, and I can go to home, right? So this is what you're used to, right? A web page with links that you can click to, but all we're doing is visiting these static files by accessing their route using a static web server. So if I wanted to use Webpack here, I could set up Webpack, right? I could make myself a source directory with a bunch of files in it, which would eventually compile to something like a browser.js, let's say, right? So let's say I used Webpack to create this file. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come in here and put my own code in here, but can y'all imagine how I might use Webpack to write some source files and then tell it to compile to this file here, and I can go over that, or rather skip over that. Does that confuse anyone? What I'm talking about? Right. Yeah. So like, let's just say browser.js was dynamically created, right? So then in my HTML file here, I'll just link to /browser.js, and now, oh, I've got to start my web server back up again. and then go back to the home page where I linked to it, and we should get browser.js alerted here, right? So this is one side of things where I just have 3 files in a directory, and I tell a web server to serve these 3 files, right? And that's a static web server. We're not handling anything dynamically. There's no code being executed when these requests come in. They're just being served back exactly what's in these text files. So that's a static server. So what I'm trying to illustrate is that you can use Webpack with a static server because Webpack happens sort of orthogonally to your web server. It happens in most cases well before your web server actually serves any requests. In development, it's happening live as we develop. But in production, when we actually run our web application for real, these assets will be pre-compiled, and then they'll just be available for use from the web server. So that's what I wanted to draw the distinction from, was that like Webpack's job is just to take a bunch of source files and compile them together and make them available to use as part of a web application. Whether that web application is static or whether it's dynamic using Express, Webpack is orthogonal to that.
What is orthogonal?
Like parallel to, but related to, but not dependent on, or not something like that. Now I'm embarrassing myself if I don't know the actual. Orthogonal. I use this word all the time. I should know it. Involving right angles. Statistically independent is more like what I meant, but I'm probably grossly misusing this word. But basically, it's related to but separate. Yeah.
Could I get another topic?
Oh yeah. If any other Webpack related questions? Yeah.
I saw that you just did HTTP server on your shell. Do you have that in your path? You're able to do that?
Well, yeah, because I did npm install globally HTTP server, and anything installed globally should already be in your node path. So if I look at, is this what I have installed? I don't remember how you see what I have installed, but yeah, I only have a few globally installed node packages. Cool. All right. What's your unrelated question?
Like high level, talk through what agile development is.
Agile development.
From your own experience,
I mean, my experience of agile development is basically, agile being trying to be as agile as a programming team as possible. So philosophically, that means like being well aware of sunk cost and being willing to throw things away and do something different and not being attached to what you've created, and knowing that any work you've done in the past is sunk cost. Like there's a philosophical aspect of being agile. That's what it means to me. Other stuff around agile has to do with very specific programming practices like Kanban, which is a way of tracking who's working on what and what work needs to be done. It got an interesting background that comes from the innovations within the automotive production line in Japan. There was a system. There's some systems that came out of optimizing. I can't remember which Japanese car manufacturer it was, but they made they improved their production line a lot, and some of those practices came into software development, which is part of agile, from my experience. I mean, I guess if feature-driven development is here, then that's another philosophical approach to what you should work on. It's really easy for a team of programmers to be like, oh, we need to work on something technical. We need to improve our models or improve our queries to the database, or we need to make this page do this because of a technical reason. And so feature-driven development and behavior-driven development are meant to reorient you as a team of developers and product people to be focused mainly on what brings value to the user, right? And to look at your work in the terms of value to the user, right? So if I have a story that's like, add more genders to the sign up page, right? That brings value to the users. But if I have a task that's like add a background or like change the way we send welcome emails to new users to be a background job, that brings no value to the user. They're not going to know that happened. They're still going to get the same welcome email, right? So there's some work that's just a chore for us to do, and there's some work that brings actual measurable value to the users. So behavior-driven development is meant to orient you upon those specific behaviors of your application that bring value to the user. So,
No, I was gonna say, like, is that like, I guess the person that kind of spearheads that whole process would be like a product manager or project manager?
sure, you're going to be working with people who are going to be with other folks who are likely going to be deciding what is most important to work on, but maybe you'll work on a small team and you'll be part of deciding what you think is the most important thing to work on. But the key feature here is just that we want to be thinking about the work that we're doing in terms of how it impacts our users. And if our work isn't going to impact our users, then we want to make sure that we're sprinkling in that work that the users are never going to see, along with some constantly delivering value to the users in an iterative fashion is been part of my agile practice, I guess, where it's like, instead of like, if we're sitting down talking about building a feature to our application, and we could talk about building this large feature and releasing it 3 months from now when we've built it, but we could also consider breaking it up into 16 different pieces if we can bring 16 different little bits of individual value, and we can incrementally get you to that full set of value. I'd prefer to do that, because because 3 months is a long time, so I'd prefer to bring some value in the first month and then be agile and view how the users respond to that change and the rest of the changes that impact our business and be able to switch directions, right? So rather than saying like, we're gonna sit here and release nothing for 3 months until we drop this brand new awesome version of our website, that's not as agile as dropping incremental changes. This button looks a little bit better. Now the tabs look better. Now this page is a little less annoying. Now this form works a little better, and just incrementally release stuff. This is all philosophical side of agile development. There's all kinds of stuff to talk about with like the specifics of doing stand-ups in an agile way, and organizing your tickets and what work's actually happening and the flow of your development and how the team works together. There's all kinds of other agile stuff that goes in there, but that's kind of high level.
Yeah, it's just as a developer talking, like, if you meet a PM, you don't want to sound like you've never ever, even if you've never
Sure.
done it before, you have it. We need to sound like
Yep. If you ever cannot sleep, just put on a YouTube video explaining agile development, and you'll learn something and fall asleep way faster than. Cool. Any other questions? We got another half hour. Everybody knows everything.
Well, can we?
Not that I
My
would
bad.
retain anything. Just about,
Oh, from this kind of
no,
QA.
just in general, I have a trouble with like retention stuff and all.
Yeah. Yeah, memory is tough, and whether or not we've got enough sleep, or if we're stressed, or if we've had some emotional, upset in the like, this all affects how well we can retain information. It's a process.
All right, can we talk about? I know you've done it already, but can we like go in depth with associations? Many to many has one too many.
Like SQL
Yeah.
table associations.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to know about SQL associations?
Like, how do you? I know there's like a table that's supposed to act like a bridge between two tables.
A join table, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can join two tables, but sometimes we set
No.
up
A
our-
join table is different from just joining two tables.
Oh, my bad. So yeah, let's talk
So
about
yeah,
join
so if you
tables.
have users which have an ID and they have a name and an email, right? There's our users. That's all we care about, our users, and they're probably gonna have a password, an encrypted password or something like that, right? Okay, and then let's say we're making a blog site, right? So we've got posts. So a post has an ID, and it's got a title, and it's got a body, and it's got an owner ID, which this references user ID. Okay, and then let's say we've got tags. So these are tags you can tag your post with, right? So they're going to have an ID. They're going to have a name. So these will be things like, Ruby or JavaScript or Node, right? Because we're just tagging our posts, right? So we want to be able to tag our posts. So right here we have a relationship that is an owner relationship. Posts has a user ID column, an owner ID that references a user ID. So that means if this is a required column, every single post will be linked to one specific user, which means it's a one-to-one relationship, one post to one user. It's actually an n-to-one because users can have many posts, but posts can only have one user. So it's n-to-one, and we call this relationship users is an n-to-one to posts, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so and now we're going to talk about a little more thing, which is posts is an n-to-n with tags. And anytime we have an n-to-n, we're going to need a join table. So we're going to do a join table by calling this post tags. That's just what I would call it. You could call this join table all kinds of things, but the tags for our posts. So what this is going to do is it's only going to have two columns. It's going to have a post ID, and it's going to have a tag ID. And it's also going to have a unique index on post ID and tag ID. And we'll talk about this unique index in a little bit. But what we've got here is these three tables are an end-to-end relationship. And that we achieve that by using a join table. So tag posts is the join table. Notice the join table does not have an ID column. Okay, that's because we're never going to reference the data in this table directly. We're never going to say select from post tags. We're only going to use post tags in a double join to ask questions like, give me all the posts that are tagged with JavaScript, right? Or give me all the tags for this post, right? So those two questions okay, these two questions here, let's look at how we would answer these questions. Do you want to take a shot at it, or do you want me to just do it? Huh?
Yeah. So let's try. Let's try it together.
Yeah. Give me all the posts for tag JS.
Okay. So you say you're asking the query. What should the query be?
Yeah. Let's try to write this query.
Okay. Cool. Select. Star.
So select star from post. And I'm actually going to modify this to be posts.star because we're going to do some joins from posts, okay? And then where tag equals JS. So we know somewhere down here, we're going to need more here, but we know it's going to be where tags.name equals JS. Just make it lowercase. So what do we need in the middle here?
Join.
Yep.
You scroll up. On posts. Owner ID references. Oh, I see. So I guess we'll be joining on from posts.
So let's think.
Tags.
So yeah, so what we want to say, right, is we want to get just the posts that have that tag. So we need to join to tags somehow, right? But tags and posts don't link together. They link together through post tags. So we need to first join, because we're going to join from posts to post tags, and then from post tags to tags. So join to post tags
Post ID.
on post tags dot post ID is equal to posts dot ID. Okay, so now we're only going to get the posts where there is a record in here, right? So if there's nothing in here, that means no posts have no tags. Let's say we have 100 posts that don't have tags, right? Nothing's going to be in here, so we're going to get back a null set because we joined against a table that didn't have any matching things. And we might need to do an outer join or a left join or an inner join. We might need to play around with which join it is, but we'll play with this for real in a second. But let's keep working on this. So then in order to keep doing the other one, we need to join again on, we're going to join tags on, anyone want to take a guess at this?
Tags.id equals post tags.tag ID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is a query using a join table. So let's build this schema real quick since we have time.
While we're building schema, what is the difference between letting posts use like a auto incrementing serialized index or ID that just generates itself versus using the unique index to together?
This is not the same as auto-generating. Auto-generation of an ID is at least in Postgres, is called a sequential column or something like that.
I mean, like since we're not referencing the index itself, what is the?
Oh yeah, I didn't talk about this, but I can. Basically, what this does is that we need this to prevent two identical entries. We don't ever want two entries in this table of post 10 and tag 14.
Right.
We don't need to link those twice. So all this says is that any two combinations can only exist in this table uniquely one at a time,
Okay.
right? So it just means if I try to tag, this blog post with the same tag it already was tagged, it's just gonna not, the database won't let you do that.
Otherwise, it would just say, okay.
Otherwise, you can just tag it over and over and over, and it doesn't get us anything, right? All it's going to do is give us a bug, because if we want to delete that tag, then maybe we only deleted one, and then it's still tagged, whatever, right? So this is just sort of like preventing.
So internally, it is still keeping track of indexes, but it's also making sure that rule.
Yeah. In SQL, indexes are both used to optimize queries and make the queries faster. They're also used during insert time as like restrictions on what can be put in a table. So for example, every time we have an ID column that has a sequential, we also get a unique index, which means we can't have two tags or two posts or two users with the same ID, because there's a unique index on that column. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's whip this out really quick. Create table users. I don't remember how to do a create table. And the SQL documentation is like, who can read this? Like someone can read this, but I can't read it.
You're trying to create did you already create the schema?
Nah, I didn't create. I mean, I just kind of pseudocode it.
Oh.
There we go. I'm just looking for something I can copy because I'm lazy. So it's going to be something like ID sequence, something like that. Serial. And then name is just varchar 255, and email's the same.
You might have to say primary key after serial on line 2.
Is varchar less intense than text or something like that?
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
going to be after. I don't know if that matters.
Is it after?
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. So I think this is what tells it to make that index, so that it's the primary key, so that there's only one. And then this creates like stores the sequence so it knows how to increment.
Right.
Okay, so then we got users and what is it? Drop table if exists users,
Yeah.
like that.
I also had to put cascade for some reason because it was throwing error.
That's probably because you're using real references, but I'm not going to use real references.
Okay.
And then this will be posts. I mean, really, none of these are allowed to be null. And then we'll make tags. just has an ID and a name.
If you don't set the foreign key, I know.
I generally don't use foreign keys. They're useful. They have a purpose. They do keep data integrity for you, so you can't delete a record that's referenced by another record because you wouldn't want that, right? We wouldn't want to post with an owner ID for an owner that doesn't exist, right? So there is a use for it. I just tend not to use them because I'm used to Rails, which just doesn't use them. But they're definitely a tool you can use. Okay, and then we need post tags.
What don't you use, Jared?
I don't use database references.
Oh,
So like foreign keys, basically.
okay.
Not that you can't. I just find it. It's probably I don't know. It's just trade-offs, right? So I just have never used them. Although I'm sure that I have edge case. I've had edge cases where references would have helped me with those edge cases, but I've never gotten in trouble not using them. All right, so post tags just has a post ID integer not null and then a tag ID. All right, is that schema making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so then
So you don't have to declare the unique index or key or anything like that. It'll auto handle it.
I don't have to insert. Sorry, asking that again.
For
What?
the post tags
Yeah.
table, you don't have to, is like declaring a key required?
Declaring what key? You mean
Like, a key? Like,
a primary key is not required on a table, and I think you can have more than one.
okay. I mean, yeah.
But this table we don't need to ever reference any particular row in this table.
Okay.
So only if you need to reference a particular row in a table do you need a primary key.
Okay. Is there something that you would tell it to do the check and say if it's already here, don't do it, or just like automatically see it's there and just keep moving?
What do you mean if what's already here?
You said unique index on post ID, tag ID, so we wouldn't have post.
Oh yeah. I do need to say add index here, but I'm not going to do that part.
Okay.
I do need to create the table and then give it this unique index. I just don't remember how to do it, but I can. PSQL create unique index. So create unique index on table. Oh, this is the name, so we'll call it unique post tags on post tags, and then you give it, I think, comma separated column names if you want it to be both.
Well, we're gonna video like this one.
Why did that mess up my formatting? That's weird. Okay. There we go. All right, so now insert into users, values. We'll just say, I'm going to end up giving IDs here when I insert, just so that I know what the IDs are, because the sequence will change. But normally these IDs would be generated for us, right? But I'm just going to create a couple of users so I know the IDs. I don't know, that'll be good enough. Okay, let's see if this part works. So create DB example blog and load the schema. Great. So let's look at Postico for example blog. And we'll say select star from users, and we got back those users. Great. Okay. so let's insert some more stuff. So we need a couple blogs. I'm just gonna do 2 blogs here, or posts. So posts has a title. So we're gonna give posts 20 IDs, and then it has a title, Jared's first blog post, and this will be Carla has a new blog, and then the body.
I like crystals.
And then the owner ID is Carla, and the owner ID is me. There we go. Okay. And then we're going to insert some tags. So tags just has ID, so we'll give these 3s, and we'll make this tag crystals. We'll make this tag Rick and Morty. Okay. So as I'm doing this static insert, I'm using this little trick where I kind of give a numerical scope to these records just to make it easier. Like the 100s are users, or the 10s are users, and the tags are 30s, and the posts are 20s, just to make it a little bit easier for us to play around with that. And then we need to insert into post tags to link these things together. So to link these things together, we just need to say the post ID, which is 20, is linked to the tag ID 30. And, oh no, the other way around. 21 is linked to 30, and 20 is linked to 31. Yeah, so that should mean my blog post is linked with, let's create a couple more of these. I don't know, some sage or something. And then, I don't know, I don't know, doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll link my Carla's blogs to 30 and 32, and then me to 30 and 31 and 33, yeah? Does that seem right to those watching? So let's try to run the schema again. And it's this comma. All right, so now if we take our query and we change this to Sage, we get Carla's blog is linked to Sage. So let's make a couple more of these. Yeah, right. Okay, so 21, 22, and 23 need to all be linked to Sage. And then I'll make another one of mine called JS.
You're saving a name and what?
What now?
You're saving, what are the 2 strings?
Post tags is the post ID and the tag ID.
In posts.
This is in post tags. In posts, I'm saving the ID
Yeah.
and the title and the body and then who the owner is.
Okay.
So 10 is me, so I own these. There we go. That's a terrible blog post. JS for cats. There we go. And we'll also link 24 with 33. All right, so if we run this again, and I messed it up.
Comma after 11.
Thank you. After line 52. All right, thank you. So now if I run this again, if I search for anything with Sage, I get Carla's 3 posts. And if I search for something with, what did I call it, lowercase JavaScript, I should just get those other 2 posts. So the query we wrote works. So let's look at it a little bit. When I'm dealing with join queries, especially multiple joins, I'll break it down by just removing everything but the first join. And we'll see, and we'll also come up here and change this to star. So if we get rid of this, we'll see that select star from posts gets us that. a table. It just shows us the whole table. It's got 4 columns. If we join to post tags, now we get a virtual table that's got those 4 columns plus these 2 columns. And you'll notice that the ID of the post matches post ID because that's what we joined on, right? So those 2 columns are going to be identical on every row here, okay? Then we're going to put back another join. And you'll see our table gets even bigger. So these first 4 columns are the post table. These next 2 columns are the join to the post tags table. And these final 2 columns are the tags table columns. So you notice how we have 2 IDs. This one is actually post ID, and this is tags ID, which you'll see these always match. Tag ID, 30, 30, 32. These 2 columns will always match, and post ID and ID over here will always match because that's the 2 joins that we have, right? So we get these, this is literally what SQL's doing, is it's building this giant virtual table. So then once we have this giant virtual table, we just add our where clause. We just say where tags equals JavaScript, and you'll see now we just scope down to a subset of that virtual table that we created. And then if we want just the columns from the post table, we say posts.star or whatever table we want from, and then we'll just get those. So that's how I break down a multiple join query. Is I start with my select everything and I build up my joins until I see I've got a big virtual table with everything I need, and then I select down using where conditions.
Can you also quickly talk about using aggregate functions? Like, how do you get the data that's going to be produced down into the function that is almost called in the first line? Do you know what I mean?
No.
If you say select average, and the argument inside the average could be anything, but you're going to figure that out later in the query.
We could look up average and that function in Postgres and see what it does, but I'm not set up to do an example where we're aggregating responses. I mean, other than we can do like count, and now we see we got 2 blog posts that have JavaScript versus 3 that have Sage.
Okay, so I guess my question is, if the count, so the post.e was something that you would come up with later.
The what?
So on line 2 you have count, and as an argument you're giving it posts.star.
Yeah.
What if the post.star thing was not available at the time you were doing count?
Why wouldn't it be?
Because that would be something you would write the query that you're writing. Maybe I'm just confused, but I'm running into a situation where I don't know that. Like, I don't know.
Well, so I mean, like, I think we can take a whole query and say select count star from, and then do this as like a subquery if you didn't have this beforehand.
You gotta put inner query after the last time, after the closing parenthesis.
I've got to put the inner query after the close.
Type inner underscore query.
Really? Like that?
Yeah, try that.
What?
Yeah.
I've never done that before. Cool. Look at that. We got 2 posts. And for Sage,
Wait, what was that, Miles?
apparently putting inner query lets you do a subselect here.
Wait, what?
I don't know what that does.
Yeah, it worked.
What was it?
If you want to,
I thought you could
if you
just
were
select
only
from
to
another
generate
subselect, but
or not
apparently,
necessarily join it, but like use it as a table, then you have to wrap it in the parentheses and put inner query, so that SQL knows, oh, you're doing a thing first, and then I'll evaluate the statement.
yeah, that's weird. I've never done that before, but this is just trying to help with your question. So I'm not sure why you were saying like how you would do this count before you had this data, because this is how you do counts in SQL, right?
Yeah, I think Miles can explain it better. 'Cause
Sure.
It's
The
almost the
situation
same
I ran
problem.
into where I needed that was where we had to get out some data where it was generating a table where you're saying this column is going to be some column times some column. So it was generating a column it was generating data to display a table.
Oh, interesting. So, I mean, we could,
Column has this.
yeah, we could do that. We could do select, let's see, post.id times tag.id. as silly.
Right.
I forget.
I think you just need a comma.
Oh, I don't know how you do it, but there's got to be some. Oh, thank you. There you go. So silly is just 24 times 33 or whatever. Like multiplying IDs doesn't make any sense, but
The other thing is, like, if you try to take average of that, it wouldn't let you do it. If you try to take average of silly in this scope, it would say you can't do that because you can't nest stuff.
is it just AVG?
Yeah, ABG silly. Yeah. It'll say I can't do that, but if you
Column silly doesn't exist.
Do that wrap interscope thing, we'll be like, cool, gotcha.
I see. Yeah, because yeah, that makes sense. Although I don't know, because count works, right? So why can't we do the average of tags.id? Oh, because now it's saying it must be in a group by. So this is the edge of my. Yeah.
It's like I can't put all those lines in one line.
Yeah.
You still want me to show it on this scale where layers and all that other shit.
Correct. Yeah. That makes sense. Right? Because where would it put it in the column of data, right?
Because this average is compressing.
So if we're gonna get average, then this means we want one line that is a representation of all these lines. So yeah, you do need to do a group by. Oh, I don't know if this makes any
average is
sense.
trying to put all the data
Yeah.
into one column.
Yeah.
There's no group by. It literally gets
Yeah,
all the data
so we're talking about two queries, one that gives you a bunch of rows, and then a different kind of query which gets a bunch of rows and then maps that or reduces that down to some sort of distilled version of it, like a count or an average, right?
This
So-
is my late night YouTube.
Yeah, there you go, sweet. Cool. So just so that we round this out, let's do this query real quick. How are we going to do? Give me all the tags for post ID. Does anyone have a duplicate tags? Post ID 21. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
Select.
It's a great start. Select. Get the freebie.
Tags.star
Mm-hmm.
from tags join post tags ID.
Join post tags on.
Right.
Okay.
Where?
Where what?
Tags.id is where
It's gonna be it's actually posts.id equals 21 because it's post ID 21. So it actually can be post tags dot post ID. So we can actually get away with just doing single join for this because we have the post ID. But if we want, let's see what happens actually. Crystals and sage, that makes sense. And then if we do any one of these other ones like 22, it's just sage, 23, 24, 25. We don't have a 25. So we're getting back the tags for these posts. And we only need to do a single join because the data that we're using to do our subselect or our pair, our filtering down is within the join table. Whereas before the data tags.name, right, was on the tags table. So we needed to say, we need to get the tags table and the post tags table and posts. Because if we were doing this by tags.id, if we knew the tag ID, right, we wouldn't need that. And we wouldn't need the second join because we could do post tags.tag ID. Does that make sense? But that's all the time we have for today. I hope this was enjoyable.
Hey, can you please like give us the code?
Where's my schema file? There we go. You just want the schema and the README that I have.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I'll put that somewhere. Actually, I'll just put it in phase 2.
This has made SQL a lot more intuitive.
That did not work. Oh, good. I'm glad that was helpful. All right, thanks, folks.
Right,